What is going on, everyone? My name's Boit, and I'm back with some beginner guide action. We haven't actually done one of these before. Normally, my content is more geared towards, like, some people who have some basic understanding of Age of Mythology. My face is in the wrong spot, so we're going to move myself all the way up to the top. And I haven't really done many beginner games. And before we jump into the video, we'll just start with story time. The whole reason I started this channel was because I saw that there was a big gap between the kind of newish players who've got a small grasp on the game and then the top players. So there was a huge gap between this as for whatever reason, something to do with Ensemble Studios shutting down, jumping over onto Voobly and Game Ranger, and then the amount of players that knew how to play and didn't know. That gap is kind of shrunk to nothing now. There's people at every single level now in Age of Mythology, and the thing that's missing is people coming in. So time to start gearing our information and then at least having some content for the new players. So today we're just going to be looking at one of the easier gods to start with, and I'm not gonna touch on the Atlanteans. They are unique. If you learn the Atlanteans first, that's completely fine, but then you kind of have to restart and learn the game again. So the easiest of the gods is 110% going to be the Greek gods. We're going to start with Zeus and talk a little bit about some basic strategy and all the other good stuff that comes with Zeus and what you're supposed to do in this game. So we're not going to even talk about the water. We're going to leave that out of here, and we're going to just play on a very nice standard map. This isn't one that came with Age of Mythology originally, but it's both on Extended Edition and on Voobly and played on competitively to this very day. Blue Lagoon, one of the very, very best user-made maps out there, and it's good for many different reasons. So if we jump into the game and we see ourselves, we're going to talk very quickly about the things that you can do in a game of Age of Mythology. So the first thing we're going to notice is that you have your villagers. They are going to get your resources. And a lot of people, when they first start playing RTS games, is they ask, well, how many villages should I build? I mean, wouldn't it be better if I had like only 30 villages and like the rest of my population is in army? Which is actually a really interesting point. Like if you play, for example, Deathmatch and you have like nearly infinite resources towards the start of the game, it's better to actually not go up straight to your top villager count. It's better to have all of those villagers. So they come in with a very strong point. So what I'm going to say first and foremost is that the general rule in Age of Mythology and also many other RTS games is you want to get up to a very high amount of villagers so that you can support whatever production you need to support. The fact of the matter is that what we need to support in Age of Mythology is technologies and army. And once we have all the technologies, we only have to think about the army. So essentially what has come down to meta is we want to be making villages throughout the entirety of the game. Making villages throughout the entirety of the game is the meta because it's the best, because it allows us to get our technologies, which makes our units better, which means that we can trade better with our units, and then we don't have to have so many villages to make more units. It kind of all is a vicious cycle. So think about it this way. Build max villages until you have every technology you want, and then you can start trimming down your villager numbers by sending them to the front line. We can talk about that in maybe a future video, but that's the general idea with economy. Now let's talk about the resources that are available. If you're new to Age of Mythology, you're not gonna know this, but everyone else might, but maybe you'll learn something here. We have berry bushes and chicken. They are very similar resources in that they both gather at roughly the same amount of time. So we want to actually leave these, they are the worst of the food incomes. We want to leave these to the very end. We don't want to gather those. The best resource is giraffes. Oh, not giraffes, is hunt. So anything that is essentially your villagers will shoot it with an arrow, that is hunt. And then finally you have farms. So the natural progression is you want to hunt, then you want to get berries or chicken, and then you want to farm. There's also herdables. I missed herdables. Herdables are actually the same gather rate as berries and chicken, except there is a technology which makes them faster. Now, the thing with herdables is as you leave them over time, they grow in food. So it might make sense to hold them until they have 300 food, but more food earlier means more, which means more resources now, which means we can spend them now, and now is more important than the future, which is a very good life lesson as well, because if you have more now, you can make more later. See, that's how the world works. Anyways, enough funnies. So in actuality, for the most part, gathering from your herdables before berries, if you have the technology husbandry, is better pretty much throughout the game. So if you ever find yourself in those situations where there's no hunt left, go into your herdables first, then go into your berries. That's the general rule. Now, there's no difference between tree types. There's no difference between gold mine types in terms of gather time. Every single map, competitive map, starts with a medium gold mine or two, and then you have your large gold mines. Now, let's talk about, before we go into more specifics, let's talk about win conditions, because that's going to be something that's very good to have in the back of your mind as to what's important. Now, if you'll notice one thing about every single one of these units that we're going to be seeing, my face is currently in the way. So let me move my face down here. Every single unit here, we've got the Hoplite, we've got the Toxoid, we've got the Hippocon, we've got the Prodromus, we've got the Peltas, we've got the Hypaspis. Every single one of these units costs gold. So this is the truth with every single military unit in Age of Mythology, which means gold is the most valuable resource for human units to be trained. So we can think about gold as a win condition. If we can cut our opponents off gold, that means we win the game. And yes, there are other units that kind of don't fit that. Like we have the Heracles, we have the Odysseus. Our myth units sometimes cost only food, only wood, sometimes cost gold. But everything else is going to be in the gold category. So that is win condition number one, so be very aware of that. Win condition number two is that both players spawn with a settlement or two settlements that they can potentially build that are theirs, and then your opponent has two settlements that they can build which are theirs. Now, that does not mean that you can't just move forward and build their own one, but you could do that if you want to do that. But in general, both players have got two extra settlements that they could potentially grab, and therefore can push their population above their opponents. So each town center area is getting you 20 population or 15 to 20 population depending on fortified town centers, which is a technology in the town center. So you can get a total of 10 houses or 5 manors if you're the Atlantean. So 10 houses, and that gives you 10 population each, so in total 100. And then each town center can give you a total of 20 population each with fortified town centers. So you can get up to a total of 160 on your own town centers. If you then take your opponent's town center, you not only take away 20 population that they could potentially have, but they also lose 20 population. So oftentimes when you're watching Age of Mythology and you'll see someone resign when their opponent grabs their town center and it starts becoming 4 town centers to 2 town centers, you'll see this quite a bit. And that's because there is, generally speaking, no way to come back from that situation. And it also is it's just like another win condition, very similar to the gold mine situation. There are ways back into the game, but at the top level, it's going to be hard to like find players blundering into those situations. If you're at the lower levels, you can often find your way raiding your opponent back in a lot and get back into the game that way. If they've got their town centers, timing attacks on those town centers, sometimes you can see 4 town centers getting grabbed very greedily, and then your opponent goes in with tech, and then 140 population of really strong units is better than 180 population of trash units. So that does work. Oftentimes a whole lot of the kind of triangle of things you can do in Age of Mythology is a thing as I float back up to the top of the screen. Okay, so that's the general spiel at the outset. If we move onwards, what is important in the game is attention at the low levels where your attention it's going to be hard to control everything. So what I want people to focus on when they start in this game is you simply just want to make sure your economy is going. You don't even have to worry about your army. The quicker you get at doing the economy side of things, the more time you get for the army side of things. If you watch pro players playing in any game, you're going to notice that their economy is like this. Everything they do in their economy is very, very fast so that they can be back onto their army. So that's the thing you're going to be kind of working on. So we're just going to do an example build here, a very, very standard kind of build that can be pretty much used across all the civilizations, just in some way, shape, or form. You want to kind of click your scout. If you hold shift with your scout, selected, he will move around for all of these flags that you've clicked. So you don't even have to worry about him. And we're going to move over here. So first things first, we have two technologies available to us: hunting dogs and husbandry. Hunting dogs here is a 30% villager huntable gather rate, which is very, very big. If you get 30% extra income on your food, that's really good. And the game very kindly nets you 100 gold to start with. So it's very important to get this with every single civilization if you have hunt. And luckily for you, there's very little time, so you have to decide between hunting dogs and maybe husbandry. Sometimes you can get husbandry first if there's zero hunt on the map, but luckily for you, competitive maps always have hunt. So you pretty much can always click hunting dogs. There are going to be exceptions to everything here. So the build I'm going to show you here is fairly universal. You kind of put a whole bunch of villagers onto food first, then a whole bunch of villagers onto wood second, and then a whole bunch of villagers onto gold third. This is going to be working with the Greeks, the Atlanteans, the Norse. However, with the Egyptians, wood is less important, so you might want to skip on the wood. But you can go and watch a whole bunch of other games of people playing Egyptian on this channel or someone else's channel and kind of learn Egyptian that way. They're a little bit more complicated than the Greek gods. So, or everything else in general. So villagers now moving over onto wood. We are good. We are happy. Coming over to gold after that. And you'll notice we're going to get a healthy balance of everything. That's one of the kind of, I find one of the kind of beautiful things about mythology is that everything is very, very important. You can't just go one resource for the most part. There's going to be exceptions to everything I'm saying in this video, but I'm just going to talk generalities. Now, the first thing you're going to notice here, this isn't a more of an advanced trick, but your storehouse placement is something you might want to consider getting good from the get-go. Every single player that I know is going to be trying to put a good player I know is going to be trying to put their storehouse with a little gap between the gold mine on the long side of the gold mine. This is going to give your villagers the most surface area to be putting resources into the storehouse and be as efficient as possible. If you stuff it up, don't worry, just delete it. You're going to be gathering wood anyways, and you can replace it if things go bad. But I just put my villager onto the side, and then I can put the mining camp down, and I'm never going to stuff that up there. So when your scout goes idle, there is a... If I pause again, there is a little menu option here to make sure that you can see this. It's called Show Idle Military Banner. You want to tick that on. So whenever you see this is idle here, in the early game, you can just click that, and then you're going to go ahead and click on the map again. And if I was on a black map, which I'm not, you would see that I am sending said scout to different, like in a sort of circle in a way. We also need to make sure we get that house. If you are not using this this thing here, this is called auto queue in the thing here. Sometimes it's over on this right hand side. If you're using Ipit's mod, it's over here. But this thing is not going to alert you to whether you're housed or not. So auto queue. If you manually train units, it's going to alert you. But effectively, you want to be throwing your house down about 14 population, 13 population in. With pretty much every civilization can get their house out within one villager. The Egyptians is within 2 villagers for one. So that's something to keep in mind, but just chuck it up when you can, and everything is going to be fine and dandy. Now, one thing you're going to notice here is I'm not going to continue sending villagers onto the same hunt spot. After I have enough there, I'm going to start sending them elsewhere. So these villagers here are going to go to one location, and then the other villagers are going to go to the other location. This is going to allow me to have a much more consistent source of income. Less villagers are being idle. As you get better and further into super tight build orders, you're going to notice, especially like my builds and maybe some of the other players, where they calculate exactly how much food they need in the classical age in order to advance, and then they can chuck all their villagers there to get the most crisp classical age. At the starting level, it doesn't really matter. We're just trying to get the basics down and get ourselves off to a good start. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's going to be fine. So villagers going onto both of these different locations here, and we're probably going to chuck down a temple when we can. One little trick you can do with these villagers is just move them across so that they are right next to the storehouse, so they've got no time to do that. And we're going to shoot our zebra here, no problems. And then over here we need to shoot our rhino here. Okay, so this is a different type of hunt. This is an aggressive hunt. You're going to find this with boar, with elephant, etc., etc. one very simple way to combat this is to shoot it, have a watch until the rhino comes over here, and then whichever villager is going to be the one getting attacked, so this one's the one that gets attacked, you're going to grab that and you're just going to shift click around the granary and then then click back onto the rhino. That way the villager will automatically come back. You don't even have to think about it anymore, and you're back off looking at other things on the map, being a little bit more efficient. Okay, so if you're doing builds this way, I mean, this isn't necessarily meta, but if you do follow this exact build order, you're going to notice you've got resources in the bank. One thing that's really important in RTS games is trying to keep your resources low as possible, unless you're saving up for something big like town center, like age up, fortress, upgrade, etc. So at this stage of the game, the only thing I'm saving up for at this point is going to be classical age, and everything else doesn't matter. So I don't really need wood. I don't really need gold. Like, I can spend that. So why not spend it? We've got husbandry here. Getting husbandry early only speeds up our herdables getting resources. So we're going to grab that, and that's going to be fine. And we're just going to have to be sort of careful because our villagers aren't going to be dumping their resources, and we might have to force drop because they're going to be going up to 30 resources carried rather than anything else. So once you've got enough villagers on food, which I feel like we have, you start putting villagers over onto wood, because the next stage of the game is going to be what we need to be making ourselves military buildings and military units. So we need to have wood where that is concerned. So may as well just put that onto wood, and we'll see we're going to be needing houses as well. So may as well throw up some houses. Let's just throw up 2. Why not? We're not too fussed. All good. And then we should be able to advance here. No problems. Okay, so we're going to advance. It doesn't really matter which god we're picking at this point. Obviously, the higher level you get, the more important it's going to be which gods you pick. I'm going to get myself pickaxe. I'm going to get myself hand axe as well when I can afford that. And those are your 2 classical upgrades. They're really important. I see a lot of people ignoring them, which is fine at the higher levels, but if we're not at the high level, maybe don't worry so much about it. So we're going to move forward onto more hunt. Again, we're going to be looking at this once these villagers attack this. So what I can do here is I can click this, I can click right click and hold shift to queue up actions. This is something I get asked quite a bit. How did Boit do that? Well, I just hold shift and I just click around the map. So we're looking at this and we're just going to go, okay, what do I need to move? It's going to be this villager again. So we're just going to click on that villager, click around, and then he's going to be fine. He's not going to die. Back onto that. All good. So now we can get ourselves our Jason and everything else. We can throw up a barracks. We can throw up an archery range. We can even throw up another barracks. May as well. And I mean, it doesn't really matter where you throw these up at the start of the game. We're just looking to throw them up as fast as possible. Again, as you get better, it's going to be more important to get those buildings in more safe positions or specific positions. But just get them up at this point and start producing units. And you can see I can probably even afford one more archery range here, so let's do that, and we're going to get going. So one thing we are very much going to notice is that this population is going to start skyrocketing here. So it is worthwhile to talk a little bit about control groups, just as a beginner. So I see people saying, Boit doesn't use control groups. That's because my face is always over my control groups. So one thing you can do is you can put all of your control groups into one button here. So I've got all my control groups under 1. I've got my town center under 3. And that way I can make those by hitting control or shift on the button that I want them to be on, and then I can easily select them and then make a rally point. Same with my town center, I can easily select that and make a rally point without having to bounce to the building. So find keys being Control B or H, Control A, etc., etc. Don't need to use those because I can just use control groups, double tapping to get them and then getting them all there. So one thing that can be incredibly useful is having a dedicated house builder, which I can just chuck onto 6 here, and then every single time I want to build a house, I can just hit 6, double 6, and then E, and then click, and then we're good to go. As a general idea there. And then the game continues, and we can start continuing our production here, and we live the dream. So this is effectively, and we're going to have to keep on building houses here, so I'm just going to keep building those houses. And one thing that's really, really good with the Greeks is, if you look at how the build order, the build order I've used here, you'll notice at the bottom left of the map, I've got 11 villagers on food, 10 villagers on wood, and I hadn't had to put anything onto gold just yet. Now I'm going to go all the way up to 10 villagers onto gold here, and this is going to be allowing us to have a very nice, safe amount of food, wood, gold, income to support all of what we are building here. I could also have considered getting myself a Minotaur at this point, but we're not going to worry about that. We want to have that food just in reserve, just in case. And you can just see all these units coming out. At this point, you've got units just set up. You can think about attacking if you want. If you feel like you can control it, you can go for that. I'm going to move back home, jump onto my pigs now. Like I said, pigs before the herdables is good if you don't have hunt. We do have this hunt over here, but I could go to that, but I'm not going to. And we're going to keep building these villages. No need to get those extra upgrades just yet. These villages here will come over onto this hunt, and that's going to be fine there for us to use. And everything just keeps coming out. Like you can see, all the resources are nice and high, nice and happy. And you will see a little bit of idle time in these buildings, but that's okay. So I don't think there's much more to talk about here. Now, I do this thing where I put my army into its own control group. This is just so that if I want to bounce between my home base macro and back to my army, it's really, really easy. So you don't necessarily have to have every single unit in a control group, but where your main army is, you want to have something there. So every time I click on my army, I have a habit of just hitting Shift 5. It's not 100% important. It's not the most important for a beginner to be doing this, but it's something in the kind of intermediate stages that you should start working on. And that'll help you control your army and economy much, much better. We can also get our armory. Essentially, this is a bit of a golden rule with, to just never forget, a bit of a golden rule for every single civilization is, once you have 115 supply of houses in the classical age, that's the time to build your armory. That is the golden rule to stick to. And if you follow that rule, you will always have a fun time where that's concerned. Okay. So now we're going to have ourselves 10 villages on gold, and we can start thinking about just piling onto food and getting up to the next age. This is again, like, not super meta, not super standard, but super easy and very, very strong way to play the game while you're learning everything that's important in the game. As you can see, we're going to hit 115 population very early in the game, and you could very easily be running people over with a restoration push right now. Very, very tough to stop with Zeus. And a lot of the low-level players are going to fall to these kind of strats. If you're playing like Thor or anything else, you can also do something very, very similar to this and have a very fun time. And you can just see that auto queue's been my friend. I basically haven't had to do anything here. Finishing up this final bit of hunt here. I don't have any other hunt on the map, so I'll have to come back onto these berries over here. And then we can actually stop production on everything. And the rest of that food can just, or population can go into villages if it needs to. I can get myself Odysseus if I want to. I can throw more buildings up. I can get a town center. And that's the general gist of the early game here, with pretty much every civilization. This is obviously very, very bad, so let's fix that. Luckily, I saw that. That doesn't happen too often. Normally, they would chop down this, but all my villagers being funny there is hilarious. These villagers here might want to come back onto our berries. Remember, we said berries first. And we're off to the heroic age, and everything kind of just works. Something to practice against the AI for sure. And we town bell, and you can pick any god here. It really doesn't matter at this stage of the game, and it's good. And we can think about, well, what do we want to do now? So remember the win conditions. If there was, if this gold mine is expired and we want to put pressure on and just completely put pressure onto our opponent, getting our upgrades and getting everything is important there if we're going to be fighting. Otherwise, may as well just get more population, get our town centers up. Yada, yada, yada. This is very, very a good way to play the game at this stage. So I could take like a whole bunch of these villages and put them onto gold or something. Probably actually should have taken these villages and put them onto gold in hindsight, but we didn't. We can just take these villages over here, put them onto wood. And we can start thinking about getting our town center. In fact, we can just walk over and get the town center now and get ourselves our third town center, our fourth town center, and then start thinking about setting up our farms. As you can see, running out of food, the farm transition is going to be pretty important, right? So we don't really want to take these villages off of wood here. That food is important. Or sorry, that wood is important. And we're going to move forward onto this. Our gold mine's going to be expiring soon. No problems. We'll move to the next gold mine and live the dream. Now you can be thinking about throwing walls up and stuff like that if you have the time and feel like doing it. I don't feel like doing it, so I'm not going to. Hehehe. Okay, so now we can get ourselves plow as we start thinking about getting to the trying to get that farm transition. We have enough army here, so once you've got an army that is bigger than 30, that's a little bit too many units, really, if you're thinking about getting all your technologies and everything else. So we can start throwing up our farms. One thing I'm going to say is pay attention to your farms. Place your farms with care and they will give you more resources. If you do not place your farms with care, they will give you less resources, and more resources is always better. One more advanced trick, if you see your wood villagers walking, is to build another camp there. That's going to be very good. You can just see how much I'm focusing wood right now over food, because I need to get my villagers out and get my farm transitioning happening. Trying to do everything kind of slow so you can see it. I still have these berries I can jump onto. It's a nice granary here as well that I can go to. And everything else. I'm going to actually be running into a lot of gold very quickly here, but that's on purpose because we need to get irrigation. Irrigation being the most important economic upgrade in the heroic age. I'm not going to get those there. We're just going to keep building our farms, getting ourselves up to a whole bunch of food yet again. And remember, we're trying to make these farms nice and beautiful. If you have the time. And we can continue with this idea here of getting ourselves more wood, because it is good. Next upgrade is going to be wanting to get the fortified town centers, getting ourselves a fortress, everything else. So we can think about getting that. And I think I've feel like I've kind of covered what I wanted to here in this video. Everything that's missing here are just decisions that you want to make as to whether or not to get army upgrades, right? So like getting these upgrades here really matters in terms of like when. So then I guess the next thing is, well, I've only built 4 military buildings. When do I build more military buildings? Well, the answer is it depends on how much you're fighting here. And then the next question is, well, if I'm not fighting, I've got 3 town centers, I'm going to have to fight at some point. So it also depends on how much economy you have. So I've got 3 town centers. I would say a nice healthy number of military buildings, to just have a random rough number in your head, is about 4 per town center. So I've got 3 town centers, so I've got 4 military buildings, so I need to start throwing my more military buildings down. So let's just do that now. It is very important to be building military buildings with only 1 villager. They build much faster. I'm going to build them over here as well, because why not? And then we can think about getting our market. Time to be a little bit controversial here. The market goes as in the corner as you possibly can. This way you get the most resources from it. It is a straight line upwards as to whether or not your market is being efficient, right? If you go right to the corner, it is much better than if you are slightly away from the corner. The further away from the corner you go, the worse the trade route. So you may as well put it in the corner if you can. Now you can see this is something here that it's a little thing. It's not a beginner tip, but I'm going to say it in the beginner guide anyways. If the farm is not directly next to the town center, it's worth it to build a granary here on the farm. It's just worth it. I mean, I've got a granary here I could have used, but I want to use this as an example. May as well get ourselves some more upgrades, and we are great, and we can get these upgrades as well. You can see I kind of favor getting my line upgrades a little bit before everything else, but in essence, you probably want to be getting your economic upgrades earlier, depending on what's really happening. You may ask those questions and so you can get an answer. So I'm going to show one more trick here before we finish the video. And this is, well, how do I build farms really, really quickly, really, really efficiently? There's two ways. Way number one is you hold F and you kind of do it like this, right? And it's technically fast, but it's actually not fast in terms of how many. It's not actually fast in terms of how fast the farms actually get built. In terms of real time. So this takes more time for you to do, less time for your villagers to do. So you have to ask the question, when you do this, is it worth it or not? So what I do is I hit spacebar, I click, I build farm, I hit spacebar, I click, I build farm, I build farm, I build farm, I build farm, and we're good. And then everything is up and we are happy, right? Does that make sense? All these farms go up very, very quickly here. And I might have to throw up another granary, so let's just do that. And we're good. And obviously Mythic Age follows everything fairly naturally. Up we go, and boom, off. We don't need that much wood. May as well be a little bit more calm, collected with it, and a little bit more accurate. So you can see I've gone much more heavily onto farms than everything else. That's just because I am Greek and I'm going to be wanting to make Myrmidon. I'm going to be wanting to make hoplites and everything else. So I need all that food. Also throwing down these armories here for the Hephaestus upgrade is good, but getting these upgrades at this point is completely fine as well. If we get these upgrades as well, carpenters and quarry, where is it? They're both very expensive upgrades that they give you exactly the same technical upgrade of your economy as like bowsaw and pickaxe. So I mean, they're not as important as getting those initial upgrades, but they definitely help out. So yeah, I think that's kind of everything I want to talk about. If we just go and kill our opponent, I'll show you if we're actually having a fight, what's going to be happening. I'm just kind of looking. I don't really know what to say. Get more upgrades. You got all the economy in the world. So if we're taking a fight here, the main thing you're going to want to look at when you're actually fighting your opponent is going to be whether or not your units are actually attacking. If they aren't attacking, tell them to attack. So right now they're attacking a temple. I don't want my units attacking a temple. I want them attacking the dudes that are there. Unless I specifically want the temple to be attacked. So just make sure whenever you move them in, you are attacking the units, and then you can kind of just say, great, they're doing their thing. We don't even have to look. And we can start production again. Upgrades. You can sell resources if you want, like I was doing then. Let's get all the important upgrades. This upgrade is really good for Zeus, Forge of Olympus. And everything is great. Here we can even class this. I don't have to look at all these guys. Are just going to do whatever they want. I'm just busy with my base. Get flood control, really important. Get signal fires, really important. This one, you're going to notice when this technology comes through how much it's going to affect the map of what I can actually see here. And you can also start thinking about walls. This is very late for walls, but I mean, better late than never. My guys just walk around doing whatever they want. It's completely fine. And yeah, you can think about getting masons. This upgrade is really good for your buildings. And you can see that once that signal fires comes in, how much of the map is not unexplored now. So there's no chance of sneaky side builds or anything in my base. They're not going to be able to get in. That's why signal fires is so good. You can keep an eye on the mini map. It's going to be great. And we might want to click here. I want to do this. I want to do this, get all our upgrades. If you save your upgrades to the end, make sure you get 3 armory upgrades. Three armories. This is for every single civilization. If you've saved your upgrades to the very end, make sure 3 armories, and you're going to get everything through. And that's basically it. The only other technology to look for is coinage for your trade route, and everything else is kind of there. If you have any questions or anything more specific you want me to talk about, beginner related, let me know, and I'll do my best where that's concerned. But this here is a fairly beginner-orientated start to Age of Mythology and things you should be doing. I hope this is kind of what people wanted when they asked for some more beginner-related stuff. I'm not 100% sure. But if you enjoyed it, please consider hitting the follow and hitting the subscribe button. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.